So I think naturally when I'm in my space of, again, about to make music or about to put the paintbrush on the page, on that black surface and seeing what emerges, I think naturally I go into that kind of heart space or that cave of the heart, that Barzakh space. And, seeing what emerges from that naturally, as opposed to sort of forcing it. And I think, and it's a ritual space.
Welcome to the Embracing Mystery podcast. Join us as we explore together ways that we can embrace creative and spiritual mystery in our lives and simultaneously find ourselves embraced in the mystery of compassionate, creative interconnection, held by what might be called the divine or source or consciousness or even mystery itself. In the process, we seek to become more fully ourselves, find our home and places of belonging, and grow as creative, spiritual, and relational beings.
Welcome back to Embracing Mystery podcast. We are on episode 10. Yay.
Yep.
And actually we have our very first guest today who I'll introduce in a moment. So we're going to do, what we always do, open with a practice. And then today I'll be facilitating. So I thought we could open with, taking a couple of breaths for a little bit and close our eyes. Take a deep breath in. And take a deep breath out. We'll just take one more. And when you're all ready, you can come back into the present moment, and then we'll get started. So today I am very excited to introduce my friend Azeem Khan, who is a librarian, artist, and musician, among other things. We've been friends for about, I think, 10 years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So, very excited. So we can go ahead and get started. So Azeem, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your cultural background, spiritual background, and anything else you would like to add?
Sure. A little bit about myself. So I was born in the suburbs of Chicago, the northern suburbs of Chicago, originally born in Evanston, Illinois, and grew up a little further north than that, and lived in the city for many years. I did undergraduate in the city. And so I feel like Chicago's in my bones. I think about Lake Michigan a lot. And when I do go back home, I always do like a daily walk, or I try to whenever I can. There's something very nourishing to kind of walk by Lake Michigan. So I feel very connected to that land and that area. Born and raised there. I moved to California. It's a little blurry, but around 2005, 2006. So I've lived here now half my life.
Yeah, okay.
So I've lived here a long time.
That was a very nice segue into your planting your age sort of in the mind of everybody.
Putting that out there.
Very indirect.
I was a Doogie Howser prodigy.
Smooth.
So I was 7 years old when I moved here. So born and raised there. In terms of family or cultural background, it's a very mixed background, mixed family. I'm multiracial. My father's side of the family is South Asian, Punjabi, and connected to, it's a little bit complicated. I think like we were talking about before recording, my dad was born a couple years before the partition of South Asia, and was born in the eastern side of Punjab in a city called Jalandhar. My dadi, my grandmother, was from Amritsar, which is a holy city for the Sikh community. My grandfather was from Jalandhar, and my father was born in Jalandhar. And then he was just very, very young when the partition happened. And then they migrated to present-day Pakistan, which we could say West Punjab, or the province of Punjab versus the present-day state of Punjab in India. And it's interesting. In some ways, I think I like to identify more with either the really specific or the really broad, meaning with my dad's side of the family, I kind of generally like to identify as Punjabi more than Pakistani or Indian, although I don't have any problem with those, and there's beauty in those cultures and those places, or sort of the larger pan-South Asian identity. And again, I love Pakistan. I love the land. I've never been to India, but obviously feel connected to that place as well. But it feels like not that there's no political identity in Punjabi identity or a pan-South Asian identity, but that's just kind of where I more comfortably sit. My mom's side of the family is mixed Irish, Scottish, probably a little bit British, but my grandma was full Irish. My family on my mom's side is Catholic. So I grew up, I wasn't raised Catholic. My mom became Muslim probably a few years into their marriage, but I grew up very much in that space. We would go to, funerals, and we would go to, weddings. All of that stuff was Catholic, go to mass on occasion. I grew up around a very religious Catholic family. Okay. So not just nominally Catholic, but a very, very religious Catholic family. And probably from a young age, this was a very meaningful experience, was sitting in, especially beautiful Catholic churches, a big, beautiful Catholic church. It felt very, very similar to the sort of inner experience of sitting in a mosque and being in a very beautiful mosque. And, kind of I'll get into more my artistic background and interests as well. But I think I've always been a very aesthetically oriented person in terms of space and architecture, and actually even just sort of the beauty of, and especially in mosques, but I could see it in Catholic churches as well, sort of how evocative just windows and the way the light shines through a stained glass window, and the sort of, geometric patterns in a mosque, and the sort of open space. And I think what that points to in your own consciousness and your own life experience, from a young age, I think there was some, and I don't know if I would have explained it in this way, but there was an internal feeling of oh, that sort of stillness, or that sense of reverence felt very much not even just similar, but felt kind of the same to me.
Yeah, sure.
And then later going to, gurdwaras and mandirs and, Jewish temples, synagogue, similar sort of experiences in those places, which I think helped me kind of go on a path I'm on.
And that was even as a kid that you were noticing that, right?
I think it's on maybe a level that a kid would experience it without being able to name it or explain it in the way I can.
Right.
But I recognized it very clearly. I think also by contrast, having family and community and others in my life, very, not majority, but some people who maybe had more rigid or conservative interpretations of their faiths, whether that was Muslim or, Christian, Catholic. I felt by contrast, I could identify with not that, and sort of making my identity sometimes out of the contrast of what didn't resonate or what didn't feel like it was part of me. And sometimes you need those extremes to be well, that doesn't really work, Right. I guess other things in terms of my background, was raised Muslim. So Sunni Muslim, kind of majority Muslim community, or the largest, group, although there's many delineations and sects within that. And grew up in a mostly South Asian Muslim community. But we did have, some other kind of folks in that community as well. And then...
And that was in Chicago.
Yes, so in Chicago.
For our listeners especially.
And actually we grew up, it was a rented Masonic temple. So we didn't grow up in a traditional mosque.
Right.
It was a very small community when we were kids. We grew up in a mostly a Masonic temple. So whenever I see sort of Masonic imagery, it kind of is evokes very much we would do our prayers, namaz, in this space that had sort of all of the sort of iconography of the Masons. Yeah. And then I think later I was oh, apparently one of the ingredients of the Masons was sort of Sufi orders, or I think particularly the Bektashi order. Other Sufi orders did have some influence there, which was a very interesting thing. Other things I guess I could mention. I've always been interested in art and creativity. I've been taking art classes. Every Saturday I would go, actually Highland Park, a community outside Chicago. I would go to an art gallery. Yeah, not this Highland Park.
Not
There's
the
multiple Highland
Pasadena
Parks. To be very specific, Highland Park, Illinois, suburb of Chicago.
Yeah.
I would go to an art gallery and basically sit there for hours. And we had an amazing teacher. And so I would do that. And I was very much oriented towards art and interested in, art and comic books and painting and all of that. That was very much there. And then I've always played instruments as well. So I learned piano. I played harp for a few years. I played trumpet for many years. And then in my teens, like a lot of teenagers, picked up the guitar.
That's the appropriate time.
That's the time.
You can start earlier, but that's the time that you just,
Yeah, so kind of jumping into the acoustic guitar. And I think I actually used my brother's acoustic guitar for many years. I didn't buy my own. I played a little bass guitar. And got really interested in songwriting, and so just had a little cassette deck and would just record little song ideas, make noise in the basement with my friends. That was a big part of my interest. And then fast forwarding a little bit, I mentioned did undergraduate in Chicago, and I did religious studies, and I also did studio art. So kind of these two facets of my interest in my life, which is this academic side, which of course connects to the personal, which we can get into later. But my own sort of exploration of spirituality and religion, and also making art, and sort of like
you held them together.
Creative. Kind of. I need to have those two pieces. And so I did that. I did a master's degree in religious studies at the graduate the GTU, Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. So that's how I originally moved to California. Was to study there. Did my first master's there, and then did my second master's in library and information science. And so currently my day job, is to work as a librarian. So I'm the director of a small college library, and try to carve out time when I can for making art and
all
music.
the other stuff.
And I have a child, so parenting. I have a 15-year-old, so
oh my goodness,
parenting life on top of it all.
Also an art form.
Yeah, so I have a follow-up question. So actually, our academic resumes look very similar with education and career.
Right.
Did your mixed background or your childhood inform your studies in religion? Like, what kind of motivated you to pursue religion? And then seminary, which I also went to as well. So.
Very much so. I think the type of sort of religious studies, or the areas within religious studies that I gravitated towards, were very much informed by the kind of things we're talking about, in terms of like this meeting place of religions. We were using the term before, interspirituality. People use, these controversial terms around like syncretic or folk religion. And I think none of these things fully capture what we're talking about, but I think it's like approximating, right? So definitely, I think growing up around these different traditions, I think also being multiracial generally, not even just sort of putting religion aside, I think being someone of mixed heritage was something that definitely informed me growing up, where I think a good chunk of my childhood having the experience of people asking the question of, what are you? I think that even that term can be very loaded.
What is a bad word to use?
What?
What?
It's like,
that's a bad start.
I'm like, I'm a human being. It's like, I'm a fish or a chameleon,
it's not who are you, right? It's what are you?
Yeah. So that I think that was like hanging over me a lot as a kid. These questions of identity.
It's hard.
And like a lot of kids from, a lot of us or most of us come from mixed heritage, even if sometimes we might, simplify it for the world.
Maybe not as obvious or extreme, but
And so I think I very much had to sort of, it felt like an albatross as a child, very much like heavy and like it's difficult to explain. And the way that question's often asked can be innocent, and there's ways that can ask that can feel kind of like weaponized or kind of passive aggressive or microaggressive, however you want to characterize it. So I had those experiences as well. And so I think as I got older in college, exploring my identity and very much like we're talking about Sufism before, I was exploring, different Sufi orders. I was going to, Catholic mass every week. I was part of a Buddhist Sangha for a while. I was very much experimenting, exploring. and
That sounds
just
fun.
yeah, it was a great time. And so religious studies, I think, came out of this personal exploration, which very much was influenced, I think, by my background and who I was. And it's going to come up a lot, I think, in this conversation, but I'm really interested in maybe what we would call like a gray area or a liminal area. There's a term that I jotted down before, which is an Arabic term, barzakh. And barzakh is a term that means like, it's a sort of intermediate realm or sort of like a realm of sort of in-betweens, right? So I think that since I was young was something that kind of made sense to me, given my mixed background. And I think a space where I'm very comfortable in that sort of like in between. And I think a space where creativity and possibility is very much there.
And remind me, is Graduate Theological Union, right? Is that a Christian seminary or was it mixed? Because I went to Claremont School of Theology where we met, which was kind of interreligious. Was that similar?
Yeah, so the GTU is actually a consortium. I was affiliated with Star King School for the Ministry, which was a Unitarian Universalist institution. Okay. So my mentor and teacher was there. A lot of my community was there. So that was actually my main place that I went and I graduated, but it was within the GTU. So yeah, a lot of my friends at that time were Unitarian Universalist, but eventually they created an Islamic studies program there. There was a Jewish studies program. There was a Buddhist studies. But I would say the majority of the schools were within Christian denominations, but there were some other ones that were sort of springing up as well.
I know they come from the more, even within, so they come from more progressive denominations, and they're on the more progressive side of those progressive denominations.
Exactly. So there was like a Lutheran school, but it was the more progressive kind of Lutheran school, Catholics and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so gonna slightly change gears a little bit. So since our podcast is called Embracing Mystery, I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about maybe what mystery means to you. How do you relate or understand it?
Yeah. It's so interesting that you're all focused in that, because again, that's another thing it's everything to me, which again goes back to this sort of like space of kind of, I think I don't want to kind of like down or kind of simplify it, the space of sort of like moving kind of beyond language. But I'm really interested in maybe I think of it as sort of like the idea of like living in sort of a space of question or receptivity. And I don't know how familiar all of you are with like the tarot, but I think of like the Hanged Man card, right? In this sort of, the different sort of tarot decks, which to me represents maybe the space of possibility, or sort of like you're hanging in between. You're kind of like, there's no easy answer there. You're just sort of receptive. I think of it as this idea of sort of being an open question.
And being in that between space that you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's like you're quite comfortable there. So.
I'm very interested, in that sort of space. And one thing I didn't mention as well, which I think is also really important to me, is dreams. The sort of like study and looking at sort of the realm of dreams and the sort of inner dream life. I mentioned this to a friend a few weeks ago, but I feel like some of my earliest memories are dreams. And I think some of my most vivid early memories are dreams. I would say just as much, if not more so, than like my daily life.
Right. Interesting.
And I have a lot of memories of like childhood dreams. And I've been writing them down more formally since I was in high school.
That's good.
So that's also something that's really important, is like this space of sort of delving into sort of the mystery of the dream world. And I really like playing with dreams and having a light touch with them, meaning not necessarily this sort of dream dictionary approach, which I think has its place and can be useful, but I'm much more interested in thinking of dreams in the way that you would interpret a poem or a song.
Right.
And it can mean many
like
things.
A literal, this object means this thing. Kind of, is that what you mean by a dream dictionary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like there's different facets, and like a poem or a song that's meaningful to you, when I look at this dream today, it may mean one thing, or I can pull one strand from it. But next week or next year, a few more strands may reveal themselves. And sometimes especially writing them down, dreams taken as a whole, or sort of patterns or sort of different things that come out, the sort of tapestry of your dream life can sometimes mean much more than just an individual snippet.
Absolutely.
How's that shaped your own kind of journey as a whole person, journey in your spirituality? I don't want to bifurcate it into some small area of your life, but like, how's that shaped your inner life?
I think it's been really central, actually, because I think growing up, I was raised Muslim. We went to the mosque. Like I was, exposed to a lot of different spiritual traditions, but I do think dreams was a space where I got the most sort of like inspiration and connection to what we would think of sort of as, spiritual realms, or that sort of in between space.
Divine mystery even, or like, is that, I don't know how that enters in for you, but
I think you can use that term. So I think at different ages, I started having, again, really vivid dreams, but sometimes experiences of meeting people who've passed, experiences in high school. I had a few experiences of sort of like premonition dreams, a lot of lucid dreaming. So we use a term like dream, and I feel like in some ways it kind of is a catch-all term for probably like a whole slew of states of consciousness or different access to different realms, internal, external. And again, all of that sort of breaks apart when you sort of look at it. But it's been really central to me. And I think it does sort of, stand as a space of sort of exploration, also of like, when you feel like you're kind of living in spaces that feel like, again, we grew up in a wonderful space. I feel very connected to Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago. But I think also, again, being multiracial and, being in a place that wasn't super diverse and maybe, not, a little bit more, I wouldn't say conservative, but more conservative probably than I would identify. I think it was a realm that was like, oh, this open space, something where their possibility is there and you can really sink into it. That was very central to me. And so again, very much, dreams were very, very much a part of that.
That's great.
So does this mean you embrace the mystery?
Or it's embracing you as well.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I've always liked things that are open-ended. I think in terms of my art and musical taste, my art taste, everything I gravitate towards in all spheres is very much, I like things that are open-ended, evocative, and are not necessarily like throwing things in your face. I think even some of my favorite films since I was young are things that feel like you can go to them and they just
and they don't necessarily all wrap up at the end. And
they're not clean. Maybe they're not linear. They're not sort of simplistic in that way. I think I feel very nourished by things that leave me open to that possibility. And I guess it's even like stepping into the unknown, or sort of the space of sort of like, again, open question. I think that's very exciting. Yeah,
I kind of want to connect this to your art and creative life. Does your spirituality inform your art?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, because you were there, I just had an opening yesterday, my first opening for an art show. And the title for the art show that I did is also the title of like a self-released art book that I just put out called, let's see if I can get it correct, Light Reflected Across a Clock's Eyelashes. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, what does that mean? Seems like a strange title or very random.
Or mysterious.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly what we're talking about. Is I think I've always been interested in things that kind of like, spark people's interests. And a lot of my art taste growing up was very much like surrealism and
that's because that title sounds almost like Dada-esque.
Yeah,
in some ways. I can see a clock with an eyelash and a
anyway. I mean, obviously Dali and
you, but yeah.
I mean, like I had a book of like Magritte paintings as a kid, and I would like take it in the car with me, and I would just like stare and kind of like take in each one, and then later a lot of artists, especially a lot of like Leonora Carrington, Remedios Varo, like a lot of amazing people that do these sort of like dream imagery. And to me, the line between sort of like spirituality and surrealism and dreams, it just felt like a natural sort of meeting point, or maybe I was interested in that sort of meeting point of these things. So my art show was very much drawing on, again, like the realm of dreams, going back to the term I use, Barzakh, which is that sort of liminal space. And I think a lot of my practice of actually making art, which is very much inspired by my daughter, and the sort of way that children have like a playfulness in making art, which to me is very spiritual, right? It's one of the definitions of a Sufi is one that's a child of the moment. And I really...
I love that.
Yeah, I really connect with that. And so I think when making art, there is, and making music as well, to me, there's a sense of sort of, being in the moment, being in yourself, and not thinking about how is this going to be received? What does this look like? What'll even be on the page? It's really
what's
just
going to come out now. Just
and that's a very Dadaist or surrealist idea as well, which is like the spontaneity. And when people ask me like, what does this term mean? I was like, when I did it and when I came up with it, it's not that it didn't have meaning, but I think I'm much more interested in sort of like the question it poses. And later, I think I fill in sort of what I feel like it meant to me or what it means, which is very much around, a lot of my work is on black paper. So again, embracing the mystery.
Noticed that, yes.
It's kind of, I'm really interested in sort of exploring this space of like things emerging out of the darkness. And the sort of like the beauty that comes from like, space, or sort of, I was very interested as a kid in like outer space, or sort of like the bottom of the ocean, these sort of dark areas,
You love the mystery, apparently.
And sort of like
explorable
creatures that come out of that.
If my favorite one of your visual pieces is one that had like, there's no head. It's like Saturn or something, a planet with rings, and then a hat that looks like it has a bird on it. I have no idea what any of it means, but I love it. The aesthetic of it. It was just, it drew me in.
Yeah, thank you so much. And a lot of the pieces, and there was very much like a collage approach to a lot of the work. Again, there's like surrealism, but also like collage art, which was very much like, maybe I would have a few images in front of me, or I'd even have a mix of like ideas or dreams or sort of things in my mind, and then a bunch of images. And I would just sort of spontaneously meld and mix them together. And I would be surprised at what I would do. And I think I like surprising myself, and that to me, art and creativity is really like, if I know what I'm going to do and I'm predictable, there's no joy in that, and there's no discovery.
So not photorealism.
Then it's
not much of that.
Well, and then that's more like an essay, right? Is when you have to plan it all out, and A moment ago, if I could, I this is a body language and kind of a comment thing. So you were starting to talk about like getting ready to create, and I saw you just physically kind of, for those who are listening and not watching, just kind of settle your body. And then you sort of leaned forward like you were going to start. But as you were talking about, before I begin to create something, I try to get to this, and so it made me want to kind of add some masala to Naza's question about the way your spirituality informs creativity, et cetera. And just so you know, in Table Collective, we talk a lot about how those are actually not different aspects of being human, right? The spiritual, creative, we talk about them differently because we have language and we just sort of have to, but they're really just part of the essence of being human, right? And so it seemed to me like right there, you were sort of demonstrating almost a practice of pausing and getting quiet and still and just waiting and then creating. Is that, but I'm putting words in your mouth. I'm really asking about what I was seeing in that moment.
Yeah, I think naturally this sort of altered states of consciousness or the practice of sort of going into different altered states of consciousness, to me, probably for every artist, but to me, I think consciously, I think of it as like a sort of internal stick shift, and like we're at one point, but I think as human beings, I think our potential is endless, and I think we have access to so many different points of,
It does seem like a lot of people are driving in reverse these days.
Well, yeah.
But yes,
but probably myself too. Like we have the sort of neutral, or sort of you're just dragging. But I do think taking, like we did in this podcast, like taking a breath, I think it's like going into a neutral space and then being able to shift to all these different realms of inspiration and creativity. And for me personally, like spiritual realms, my teacher, my mentor used to talk about the idea of going into the cave of the heart. And he often used the term, it's a Persian word, khalwat dar anjaman, which is, I think of it all the time, this idea of like retreat in the crowd or sort of being in that heart space.
With anjaman being kind of the group, the crowd.
Being in the community or being in the bazaar, like being out in the world, but internally being in a state of you're in the inner temple or the inner sanctuary all the time. That really appeals to me. So I think naturally when I'm in my space of, again, about to make music or about to put the paintbrush on the page on that black surface and seeing what emerges, I think naturally I go into that kind of heart space or that cave of the heart, that barzakh space, and seeing what emerges from that naturally, as opposed to sort of forcing it. And I think, and it's a ritual space. It's very much ritual, and it's very akin to a lot of my Sufi practices and my.
I was going to ask about that.
Life.
How does that, or how similar, or how do those inform one another? Because it's what you're describing of your creative process sounds like a spiritual practice.
Yes.
Right. That's more directly phrased than what I was trying to do. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, so in sort of like Islamic spirituality and Sufism, probably the common thing, because there's so many diverse forms of Islamic spiritual practice, Sufi practice throughout, the entire world, throughout history. But I think if you have to pick like a common point, I would say the term zikr or dhikr, however you would say it in different parts, of the Muslim world. I think that would be the central point. And zikr would be a term that doesn't mean chanting.
Right.
It literally means remembrance. And I really love kind of what that conjures or what that represents, which is you're sort of remembering some facet or some part of yourself. I wouldn't say that's dormant, but some sort of potentiality within yourself.
Yeah.
And this idea that anything can be remembrance, anything can be sort of this zikr, right? Remembering your true essence or that sort of core potentiality, or maybe that core sort of point within yourself that lines between yourself and the divine, and probably all of us and all beings and all consciousness and all that is and isn't sort of meet at that sort of central point in the heart. That's a point that kind of is brought in with that term. But remembrance can be formal chanting of the divine names. It can be sitting in
those are
silent
kind of like
meditation.
The forms trying to get at the reality of zikr, right?
Yeah.
Which is the remembrance rather than the chanting. I think a lot of times externally where people are going to go, oh, that's zikr is sitting and chanting.
Yes.
But that could just miss the whole.
And a lot of Sufi practice, I mean, some Sufi orders, which I think a lot of folks have seen, can do sort of really exuberant movement practices. So they're chanting divine names, they're moving, in parts of, for example, like Kurdistan or even parts of Iran, and in parts of, even South Asia, people can have like long hair. They're kind of moving around in sort of this movement practice. And then there's Sufi orders and different practices around sitting meditation, where you sit, and you just do breath practices. The way that I was taught was you can do the name out loud. You can do it on your breath. So you can recite the divine names, constantly. And then there's a term, qalbi, so the qalb, right? In Arabic. So going internally. So you kind of going to the point where the chanting is happening, whether you're saying it or not. You're kind of, it's almost like the pendulum, getting the pendulum swinging, and then you let go, and you kind of just let this natural. And it's
still going no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. And you sort of resonate it, and you don't just use the words. You kind of just, you can focus in the heart, and you just allow it to happen on its own accord. So that to me is very much a creative practice around, because at the end of the day, when we're making, we have to ask the question, like, who's making this? Am I making it? Is there some part of me, some mysterious sort of, inspiration flowing through like an empty vessel or reed? yeah, where is this coming from? Like, where is this
Can you
inspiration?
describe an experience maybe where you realized, oh, something else? I mean, it's me, but it's also like just an example of what you're describing right there for our listeners.
Sure. I think you had mentioned a project you did where you were making music, right? A daily practice of making music. I actually did a similar practice in 2018 where I did during Ramzan, or Ramadan, the month of fasting. I was part of basically an online group where people were doing poetry a day. So every day writing a poem inspired by their fasting practice.
Okay. Wow.
I don't think of myself as much of a poet.
But you are a songwriter too.
Yeah. So I write songs.
Thank you, Naz.
I like making music. Thank you.
Which, your music also has a very surreal, dreamlike quality.
Yeah, thank you.
And lyrically as well, right? In the lyrics and the music, yeah. Naz is right. You need to listen.
Thank you. Yeah, so at that time, I was doing so much music. I also wasn't fully employed at that time. I was doing a lot of part-time kind of adjunct
Kind of helps
positions.
with the music, but not with the bills. Yeah,
Exactly.
Right.
So one thing that was great was being able to every day carve out time as part of like a spiritual ritual practice to sit at my computer, having my Logic Pro open, and not most of the time not having anything in front of me. So I would write, record, and release one song every day for 30 days for the whole month of Ramzan. And the question you had asked around an experience of that, right?
When it really felt like, oh, this isn't just me making something because it's a song a day. This is something's happening here.
I would say there were moments the first few days of sort of not forcing, but it feeling like either a chore or feeling like something that I had to sort of like, okay, I got to do it. I got to just churn out some idea.
I made this commitment. I'm in this group.
Yeah. But at some point, there was an interesting shift that happened like halfway through or within like a week or so, where it did really feel like sitting there and doing what we're talking about, like taking those breaths. And I thought of it as very much like this child sandbox feeling of like, you're a kid, you have the paint in front of you, you have the sandbox, and anything is possible, any sort of possibility. And you're playing, I'm not like a serious artist or a serious musician. I'm just someone being playful. And again, going back to that definition of a Sufi, like I'm just a child of the moment, like whatever the moment brings. And I have my guitar, I have my keyboard, and like
whatever happens,
whatever sound comes up, I'm going with like an reverby organ sound with some delay.
Let's see what happens.
And just sort of looping it or sort of coming up with some chords and then spontaneously coming up with lyrics and not thinking too deeply.
Well, when you have to do one a day, you can't. You
really can't. You can't get too much in your head. And again, going back to...
Which is the advantage of that kind of a practice, if you will, of the
like,
everyday thing,
Yeah, it's like shifting yourself down back to the heart space, or sort of maybe the belly space, right? That sort of internal, sort of core part of yourself. Because I can be a very like heady or sort of person very much in my head or thinking things through. And I have this intellectual side as a librarian or someone with an academic background.
I relate, being cerebral. Yeah.
But I think having that balance of art and creativity as a way to sort of, I wouldn't even say balance, but sort of recalibrate to the space of, I can't get too much into my head because it's like I have things to do. So I have an hour and a half, 2 hours to just write, record, and release a song. So that was really a time where I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And I think the surprise, like surprising myself by the sort of things that would happen. And in some ways, like improvising these like sound collages or pieces and being like, I don't know who made this. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who made it or how it was made. But just happy accidents or weird glitchy things that would happen and just leaning into it again, like the Dadaists and the Surrealists. That was really inspiring to me. Really hard on my body and my mind in some ways, because I'm sure I'd love to know more about your experience too, because making that much music in a short period, it was a challenge. But again, midway through where I was able to more naturally calibrate very quickly, it was just that child in the sandbox feeling like I'm finger painting, I'm having fun, not thinking too deeply. And then later I'm like, oh wow, these lyrics, there's something there. Because it comes from you, right? Everything's filtered through you when you're making it.
Right.
So even if you're writing down random words, they're words that have some meaning to you in that moment, in that
experience. There's some part of you that picked that word randomly. Right?
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of the episode, so I did have one more question.
Yes.
We were speaking of dreams. So what's a dream project you would like to have someday?
That's a great question.
It's funny. I was thinking about this before, and it's a hard question for me in some ways, because I feel very, very grateful for like the things I've done over the last few years. Like sometimes I don't give myself credit, or I'm sure a lot of us, right? Even this podcast, like we do so many projects, and sometimes while we're in the moment, while they're happening or after they've happened, we kind of think like, oh, like, not that it's nothing, but we're just like, yeah, of course, I'm doing this thing. But then I think someone's taking stock of the things that we've done or we're doing.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I'm like, wow, I did my first art show. I put out my first art book. I played in bands. I put out albums. So again, not to show off, but it's things that
I don't take it that way at all.
Thinking about that, I'm like, what else would I want to do? One thing that came to me is like collaborations. I'd like to do more like artistic collaborations with friends and community. In the art show I had yesterday, it was just a reminder of like what community can bring. I played songs with a few friends, and I think, what can come out of you, or what people can pull out of you when you're collaborating. And again, when you go into those altered states, not just as an individual, but with multiple artists or multiple musicians, I love that sort of like space of collective consciousness or sort of shared dreaming, right? Like waking dreaming that you do in those spaces. So I think collaborations with local friends that I haven't already worked with, right? Yesterday, multiple people were like, hey, let's make art together. I'm like, yeah, why didn't we think about that before? But also internationally, like we talked before about like, South Asia or other parts of the world. I have friends, I have community in India, in Pakistan, in other parts of the world. I'd love to do international collaborations with friends, and maybe even strangers. Right now, we can make music and send a file.
It's amazing,
across the world, right? That's this collective unconsciousness, this dreaming that we it's incredible, right?
Collaborative dreaming.
Yeah. So I'd love to be able to do that, and maybe even do more travel around artistic projects and art making and music making around the world. So.
Yeah.
And you mentioned yesterday you have an album coming out.
Yeah, so in the next probably within the next few months, I will be putting out an album. I already have a tentative title, which is Birds Fly In and Out, which is a song that's going to be on the album, which I think of as sort of the heart of the album, which is very much, again, that liminal space, right? This image of like birds coming in and out of yourself and your consciousness, which is, to me, inspiration and movement and sort of this receptivity of ideas and divine power and all of that. And probably like you all saw, my art also has a lot of actual birds in it. So I love birds.
You're also wearing birds.
And also wearing
birds. Yes. For those who are not watching but listening at home.
I love birds. And I guess one thing I'll say as a quick aside is I always have dreams about birds. And one song that was on my last album was really this song where it came from a dream where I was holding a bird. I rescued a bird out of water. It was in this water. I pulled it out, and the bird was basically made out of mushrooms. And this bird to me was very representative of the potentiality of connecting the cosmic or the sky with the earth, the mushroom, right? Like this mycelium, this sort of like deep embedded thing in the earth. Now that
title makes sense to me.
Yes.
It's like connecting the points, connecting this sort of central barzakh, right?
I liked that song.
That space. So thank you so much. But
speaking of songs and liking, before we wrap up, just for our listeners, where can people find your music and your art?
So currently, I'm working on a website currently, but I would say my Instagram is one place, especially for my art.
Which is what? What would be your handle?
Surreal Fakir. So Surreal, SURREAL Fakir, FAKIR on Instagram.
Okay.
My Bandcamp page, which is Whale Sound. I record under the name Whale Sound.
Like the in the ocean whale.
The animal whale.
Not the whaling, although they wail. But
they do wail as well. Beautiful
whale sound.
voices. Whale sound
on
music.
Bandcamp. Whale sound music.
Whale sound
put all this in the
music.
show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Bandcamp.com. They're also streaming in all the streaming places, but seems like Bandcamp is a semi-decent place. So.
And where they're streaming, they would find you under your...
Whale Sound.
Whale Sound.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So you can find me there.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to derail you, but derail you.
Yes. And I also will mention this conversation, I go on a lot of tangents. So I'm sure there were questions you asked where I'm like going in 5 different directions at once.
We brought you in to take us on tangents.
It's my personality, so... I really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for this.
Anything concluding from your side, Naz, as our facilitator? Great job, by the way, today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for coming.
My pleasure. I mean, it flew by.
I dragged him here, so no.
I love being dragged here. It was great to connect to all of you.
Great.
So good to meet you.
As always, we just want to remind our listeners and viewers to send comments, check out the episode notes, because we'll have all the information for how to get in touch with Azeem there, and look forward to connecting with everybody in the next episode.